I actually think that the AI implementation, first and foremost, is change management before it comes to technology, because of getting people on board. That change is coming, change is here phase that we all experience, then it's so part and parcel of life. It's like, well, what's the change? This is just how it's always been. And I think that's kind of the shift that we're all going through at the moment.
Doesn't fix broken processes. If a business has slow, messy workflows, all it's doing is making them faster, messy workflows, essentially. So I think the pressure's there, whilst a lot of businesses are trying to understand, but I think it's really, really key that the processes fundamentally are there before they even kind of look at how they can implement AI.
There is no such thing as a silver bullet. Nothing solves everything. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could somehow have one thing that just solved every single problem? I'll tell you, I'd pay for that. They don't. You've got to have the fundamentals in place. Otherwise, all you're doing is just layering something else on top, which probably has more chance of making more chaos rather than less chaos.
So good morning, everyone. Welcome to our series in the Ask the Expert section, which we are now running today around AI delusion and what tech companies are actually not talking to SMEs about. I've brought in two of our amazing expert partners today, but for those of you that don't know me, I am Claire and I sit in our marketing team here at CH4B. My previous background, though, is I actually spent a considerable amount of time in the employment law and HR space. So in today's conversation, there are some areas that I'd like to add my 2 pennies worth in alongside our lovely ladies here. And I'd like to introduce you firstly to Fazana.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you for the introduction there. So I'm Fazana, CEO and founder of AI Infusion. We essentially implement AI solutions for small to medium-sized businesses across the UK. And proud to be an expert partner for CH4B and looking forward to this chat today.
Amazing, thank you. And to our lovely Chantel, over to you.
Thank you. So I'm Chantel Cook. I run Panpathic Communications, which is an award-winning boutique PR agency, and I'm also a CH4B partner, which is lovely. My background is in journalism, so I spent far too many years than I'd like to mention working as a journalist for the BBC in the independent sector, and kind of often the part of that was understanding a lot of different areas and getting your head around things very quickly. So hopefully I'll have something to contribute.
I definitely think that you will. So I'm going to kick this off with a little question that I want to pose to you. And Fazana, actually, it's directed really at you. So if we look now at founders of businesses, they are absolutely bought into ChatGPT. They're looking at the enterprise section of that, or perhaps Copilot, thinking that it's going to organise the chaos in their business. Because let's be honest, when we are founders of companies and we are growing at scale, there's a lot of organised chaos that goes on. But if you think about when a CEO will then buy into that shiny new AI tool to speed up a fundamentally broken process that's human element, what is actually happening to the business?
So, I mean, there's a lot of pressure currently for all businesses to start to kind of look at implementing AI. But ultimately, AI doesn't fix broken processes. So if a business has slow, messy workflows, all it's doing is making them faster, messy workflows, essentially. So if it's not clear or structured, all it's doing for the business is actually adding costs and complexity, which, makes it, it's beside the point, isn't it, right, of actually implementing AI. So I think the pressure's there, and whilst a lot of businesses are trying to understand, but I think it's really, really key that the processes fundamentally are there before they even kind of look at how they can implement AI, essentially.
I can see you nodding there, Chantel. Have you got any thoughts on that?
No, I think that's absolutely right. It's like all tools are fantastic, but they don't. There is no such thing as a silver bullet. Nothing solves everything. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could somehow have one thing that just solved every single problem? I'll tell you, I'd pay for that. But as Fazana says, they don't. You've got to have the fundamentals in place. Otherwise, all you're doing is just layering something else on top, which probably has more chance of making more chaos rather than less chaos. Yeah. So yes, 100% in agreement in terms of my personal experience too.
I think that's important, because I also think that our algorithms and our feed are we're seeing so much tech put in front of us that's time saving, and someone will jump on that and be like, yeah, I need that, and they put that layer into their business, and actually, the bottom of the cake's not there, is it? You can't put the cherries on top of the cake if you haven't made the sponge correctly, because it's just not going to work. which actually leads me into another really good point that I'd like to talk about, actually. And this is just a little scenario for you that we've put together. So if we look at, like, say, a 15-person head company, like 15 staff and owners, and they have got 20 different pieces of software that they're paying for, subscriptions, monthly, annually, bi-monthly, and they've all got those overlapping features where they all have a little bit of AI built into them. They don't talk to one another. So obviously, as I said, the algorithm's giving us all this information. And what we're doing is we're seeing that every single one of us, we're all guilty of chasing the latest AI app, the newest piece of equipment that is in front of us. But if marketing wants one tool and sales needs another, Fazana, if I take it all the way back to basics, what should the actual boring, bulletproof tech stack look like for that 15-person SME before they're even allowed to talk about a custom piece of AI?
Yeah, exactly. So I think the most important thing for any business is to have a core system, such as a CRM, a good CRM system. The data obviously needs to be clean in there. And then in my opinion and my experience, the most important thing is really, really great project management tools. And these necessarily don't have to have AI in them. I know every, system and tool is sort of integrating AI through APIs, etc. But ultimately, the CRM system and project management tools for communication within the teams, these systems need to connect and talk to each other to essentially produce one single source of truth before we even get to the point of, moving on to AI, if that makes sense. So for me, like, that is the fundamental, that is the basics. If that's not right and those systems are not talking to each other, then, it's just a recipe for disaster.
Okay, I like that. Chantel, have you got any views on that there from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, we do a kind of like a tech audit periodically where we look at all the stuff that we're paying for and using and kind of go, do we need this? Is it working? Is there a better solution? So for example, for webinars, just as an example, we were paying a Zoom Pro license. Now we're looking at, well, we already pay for Teams. Now that we come to a new Zoom, should we be using Teams instead because it's already integrated? So I think those are the kind of things as a business owner you need to do on a regular basis, regardless of AI. Yeah. They're just tech stuff that you need to check. It's like doing a tech audit, isn't it, really? Yeah. And I think the other thing as well is to not to get too excited. Now, it's easy for me to say because I am not an early adopter personality. I definitely am the kind of personality that goes, I'll have a look at this tech and I'll see what everyone else is doing and then maybe I'll buy in, kind of thing. Yeah. And I think there's pros and cons to that. I'm not saying that's the right way to be, but I'm just kind of flagging up that tends to be how I am, which means that I tend to wait quite a while before going, yeah, I want this. And the only thing that will push me over the edge is if I can really see the problem that is genuinely going to solve, not if I think there's this kind of nebulous idea that somehow this might make life better for me. I've got to be able to go, that's the problem and that is what it's going to solve. And then I'll start having the conversation about whether we get bespoke, whether we buy it off the shelf, how we integrate it, etc., etc.
Yeah, I think that's great as well, because it's that identifying the personality traits of people as well, because not everybody's going to jump straight on it. Some are a lot more cautious, some are a lot more like how you've said, and then people like yourself, as that work purely in that space, you kind of have to be an early adopter to work out whether it's worth it or not. So I totally get that. And actually very recently at CH4B, our leadership team were just reviewing all of our licenses and we were having Teams chats about who's using this, who's using that. And actually you've got to streamline it, because there's a lot out there that we all think is going to help us save time, and then we get under the nuts and bolts and realize, yeah, maybe we're not so keen on that, but we absolutely could not live without that now. So that's good. Chantel, I'm going to throw something at you now, because I've actually been doing some work this morning around blog posts and stuff like that on our website, and just auditing some of the stuff that's on the website. So obviously, AI has now made life exceptionally easy to generate content and write blogs for everybody, and LinkedIn articles and all of that stuff. It's all very, very out there, and it's a lot of the time really obvious to see, I think, because you can kind of tell an AI written post that's not been tweaked. So I want to ask you that, obviously, founders, CEOs, MDs in businesses, they are absolutely thrilled to bits that they can pump out lots and lots of content through AI quite quickly, almost like an endless pot of content they've got. and it's free for most people to use. So why is this AI content hose actually destroying brand authority and costing them trust?
Okay, well, I'm glad you asked it like that, because you presupposed the answer, which actually kind of is part of the answer. So it is true that the internet and general publications in general, we're talking about any kind of publication here, whether it's online or offline or broadcast or whatever, does have this huge kind of desire for constant content. And that's great if you want to get your brand out there and your name out there and so on. It's absolutely fantastic. So brilliant stuff, that. However, if we take it back a second and we think about why do they want content, then we have to ask ourselves, what's that content for? Well, that content is for them to attract readers, viewers, audience, let's call it, to that particular outlet, whether it's online or offline. And what attracts that audience? Well, good quality content. And what is good quality content? Well, it's not content that tells me something that if I wrote a prompt into AI could tell me. Content is something that tells me something that somebody who's done that job for however many years it is and really has an insight and an expertise can tell me something that AI couldn't work out, can give me an insight that makes me go, oh yeah, oh God, I hadn't thought about that. That's incredible. And that's the bit that moves you from just like, yeah, you know, more content into, wow, I really trust that person. That person really has an insight. That company really gets it. So if all you're doing is churning out the stuff that anybody could churn out on AI, and if you think about it in that case, you know, you and I with zero experience on, let's say, the manufacture of bricks, I'm going to choose something really weird, okay? Could go into AI and give me 5 top tips on how to choose the right brick for my building project. And AI would give me that, you know? And that kind of blog post is not that useful. Whereas what I really need is someone who can turn around and say, well, you know, bricks actually that are made in Spain are a bit different than the ones that are made in the UK, and the ones that are treated at this temperature are treated at this, you know, all of that kind of insight. And where do you live? Oh, you live on the side of a mountain in Wales. Well, actually, that means you're going to need this rather than you live in the middle of London or whatever it happens to be. So yes, it absolutely can churn out shed loads of content, but I completely agree with you. You can spot it. I can certainly spot it. I can tell you from experience, journalists can definitely spot it. We get stuff pushed back to us if a client has sent them something that's AI generated. But also think about what you're trying to do. You're trying to reach a particular audience. Hopefully, if it's PR, then it's via somebody else's platform. So you have to be doubly careful about the quality that you're putting out there, because they're going to check it too. But even if you're just putting it as your own LinkedIn or blog post, you're trying to attract an audience. And presumably the reason you're trying to do that is you want to show off your expertise, because people want to buy from experts. If it's a purely commodity purchase, then yeah, it doesn't really matter. Then it's a price thing. But we don't want to get into the commodity world. Otherwise, all we're doing is constantly undercutting ourselves. So you're selling yourself on your expertise, the quality that you can offer to your customer. And you cannot demonstrate that through AI, but you can demonstrate it through your own personal experience. Now, just to finish that off, doesn't mean you cannot use AI at all. Absolutely. AI can be a great way of producing a brief for an article. I've used it for that before. I want to write an article about this, this, and this. Please give me a brief on what things I might want to include. That's quite a good way. And then I turn it into a human piece and I write it in and I fill it in with the information that I have and the expertise that I'm pulling out of my head. If if you really don't feel you can write, you could write it first and then get AI to tidy it up for you, for example. But do not get AI to write it and then think that's your content. Because as you said right at the beginning, your hypothesis was, does it damage the brand? And the answer is yes.
Yeah. And Fazana, I'm interested in your take on this as well, because we are definitely in this world now where people are using it more and more and more for that purpose and many others. Do you have any opinion on how you can best position your brand whilst utilising the AI tools for article writing?
Yeah, so I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying, Chantal, in terms of, you know, what it does with the brand and the trust there. I do think it produces volume, but it does kill the trust essentially. Because people, they want to see real insights to the businesses, and you can't get that with AI, right? You can't. I always say, like, you know, with branding, okay, you can have consistency. Consistency is also very important for branding, and you can kind of post through AI, but essentially the more human side of it it's only going to be through a human, right? That creativity side. So ultimately, it does kill trust, I think. But also, if you look at the other side, I mean, there's that one production of content, but then if you look at the side of like the timing of how when the posts go out, you could use the tools essentially for, you know, the cadence of when you want the posts to go out. So you're saving time there. So not necessarily on the content, but on the way you're posting it, or it, depending if you have a marketing team or if it's a one person, you know, that's, you know, putting these, you know, pieces out essentially. They could use tools where they can say, I want this to be posted out 5 times on, you know, 10 o'clock in the morning, etc. So there's that element of it as well, that you can use through AI, which is potentially, you know, a better way from what it was.
Okay, lovely. So now I'm going to move into the more sort of like personnel side of things in this conversation, because we obviously have spoken a bit about tools and brand, but actually I think if you speak to a lot of employees that are embracing AI, they're getting a little bit scared that they're about to be replaced, right? I joke with my friends that they're like, yeah, the robots are going to replace us. We have that joke all the time between us. So obviously, I think one of the key areas for me that I take from AI, and I'm not an expert on AI, but I'm in a company that's very, very AI pro, and we're very, very like, we use it so well. And I think that we haven't even scratched the surface here at CH4B. And I'm like, I feel like I'm one that's just coming along, you know, I'm not the little slow one behind. But I do think that there's a lot that we can do with it for efficiency. I don't personally think that it's going to remove the human element. Just in this 20-minute conversation so far, we know that we need the human element in what we're doing. So obviously the founders, SME owners, MDs, everyone at the top of the chain, they all get very excited about being more efficient, being able to do more, maybe with less resource, or do more faster and things like that. So when we look at AI integration, I talk to my friends that are employed in companies that are using it all the time, and people immediately feel threatened by their jobs, you know, like team reorgs, redundancies are happening. And I think that sometimes staff can not embrace it in the way that it can be embraced, for that fear that their job is going to be replaced. So I've got an answer for this, but I'd love your answers as well first. But if you think about when an MD or a CEO or a founder is coming into the office and they just shout from the rooftops about the latest piece of AI that's going to make us work faster or be more efficient or is going to save time, what do you think is actually going through their heads? And do you think that these founders, these CEOs, can accidentally destroy the trust element of a relationship by actually communicating this out to them in the wrong way? I've got an answer on it, but I'd love to hear your standpoint first, ladies. Who wants to go?
I'll go. So I think that people are going to assume the worst in this scenario, you know, especially bigger companies, even small and bigger companies. I worked for a company and we've had these scenarios happen. So if the leaders are not communicating openly and honestly, it's essentially going to be it's going to have a negative impact. So it's up to the leaders to openly, you know, say that we are adopting AI and everybody needs to be on board. It's not, AI adoption isn't necessarily just technical anymore. It has to be cultural now. And and I think people that are working for companies are seeing this also. And as AI is becoming more prevalent, they're seeing this, they expect it. They might not have expected it 6 years ago, 5 years ago, but they are sort of expecting it. And I think it's so important for the whole team, you know, that was working at the company to be on board with that. Otherwise, it's just going to cause this, you know, this mood where half of people are just kind of scared to even look at AI because they think that their jobs are going to be replaced. But I think it's really important for the leaders to kind of take that accountability and make sure that they deliver that message as positively and as reassuringly as possible.
For sure, because the irony is they're actually not trying to replace their people. They're actually not, definitely not, are they? So, you know, Chantel, I know communication is your thing, so I really want to hear your point on this.
I think clearly, right, some CEOs are not very good, shall we say. I was about to use another word, but shall we just say they're not very good? And not very good CEOs will absolutely just be thinking about how can they cut as many staff as possible, how can they do it as cheaply as possible, etc. You're never going to reach those CEOs. Let's ignore them. We don't like them anyway, right? Let's talk to the sensible people. So sensible people and good CEOs are the ones who value their team and their staff. And if you value the people within your business, then they shouldn't, hopefully, if you're doing it right, be worried about the fact that you're just going to cut them the minute there's something better comes around the corner. So, you know, I could not run my business without my team. My team are absolutely fundamental to what I do. And they know they're fundamental because I keep telling them, and I hope they know anyway. And that means that, yeah, AI can come along and could do all sorts of things, but I'm never ever going to get rid of them as a result, because I value them too much, and I value all the things that they can do that AI can't do. I can maybe get them to do more work by using AI, and therefore free up some of their time perhaps to do things that require more creativity or more judgment or something like that. So in other words, those things that every business owner would love to have time to do, but you never ever get the hours in the day. Or maybe some AI processes can free us up to talk about those sorts of things. But if you value your team, then you're not going to, A, you're going to be hopefully communicating that to them and they're going to know. And B, you're not going to be getting rid of them anyway, because, as I said, they are way too valuable. So I think, in answer to your question, for me, it absolutely comes from the top. And if you're valuing your team appropriately, then I don't think that's something that you need to worry about. I'm not saying that you don't say anything. And, you know, I'd like to, you know, I think if you are in a business where AI looks like it could really cut staff, then maybe that is a conversation you need to have quite openly, quite explicitly, not implicitly, but explicitly say, yeah, we're bringing in these AI tools. We think they're going to do this. Nobody's jobs are on the line, assuming that is true. And, you know, but we're going to hopefully free up this amount of time, and what we want to spend it doing is this, or whatever. So it is absolutely, as you rightly said at the start, it is about communication. It's about being clear. It's about being open and transparent. And if it does mean there's going to be some job losses, then I think it's best kind of to say that. And I completely get that as a CEO, you know, there's often, especially if you've got a lot of staff. I run a relatively small business, so I don't have a huge team, but I do know that if you've got a lot of staff, you probably know who some of the ones that you'd kind of rather weren't there, maybe. And then those ones AI could be that opportunity for redundancy. You know, I'm not saying you should keep every member of staff just because they're a member of staff, but nevertheless, I think AI is the opportunity to do other stuff, not just to cut staff. And it's an opportunity to reinforce with your team how you really feel about that team and how much you value them. It's just, this is the thing I think about everything in business. You could almost throw any question at me, and I think my answer would be, it's an opportunity. And I think this is the same thing.
But that's a great way to be. That's a great way. And it absolutely is an opportunity, because those staff members, if some of their job can be automated through AI, they can work on higher value tasks that are actually worth more. They might get more job satisfaction out of it, you know. So I think that a lot of the time when people hear about the AI adoption, they're not actually, what's said is not what's heard sometimes. And I just think that, you know, they don't hear the business is moving forward, it's going to be more efficient. What they're hearing is, am I going to be able to pay my mortgage next month or the month after? Or can I feed my children? Because they worry that their jobs are going to go, because they think their job is at risk. But as I said earlier, the irony is, I don't believe that founders, owners, MDC, I don't think they want to get rid of people. They want to make their business more efficient, deliver a better service for people. And I just think that if we communicate it correctly to people, and like you've both said, just be open and honest about it, then it's not going anywhere. AI is going to continue to filter into businesses. The technology is going to keep going. So we kind of all got to go with it rather than kind of resist it, which I do think. And that's just, like I said, that's just conversations with my friends. Like, some of them are very, very like, yeah, like, go away, I don't want that. But if you can do something a bit more exciting in your job because of the result of AI, then hey, the days will go a lot quicker for everybody. So I think with the AI implementation, the last note I'd answered myself on here was that I actually think that the AI implementation, first and foremost, is change management before it comes to technology, because of the culture, because of getting people on board. That change is coming, change is here phase that we all experience. Then it's so part and parcel of life. It's like, well, what's the change? This is just how it's always been. And I think that's kind of the shift that we're all going through at the moment. I've got 2 more sections I want to throw at you ladies, and then we are going to be done for today. So let's look at like intellectual property, because that's obviously going to be a really, really big area moving forward as AI continues to grow, develop and implement itself into businesses. Okay, so let's talk about data, sensitive data, going through public AI platforms right now to help write emails faster, put documents together, put contracts together, all that sort of stuff. How much of this is a massive legal and security risk?
It's
Floor's open.
yeah, it's a huge risk, Claire. It's a serious risk. And it's happening because AI is moving so quickly. It's not even giving anybody the chance to put those guidelines in place. And I know there's things going on in the background, legislations, etc. But it is down to the CEO, the business, to essentially have clear guidelines for their staff on what to do and what not to do when it comes to their own data, but also client data. And it's really, really key that the internal training is provided before they even like with the basic like ChatGPT. Like you can't just put data into ChatGPT, especially when you're working for a company. It's just there is serious risks involved. So I think it is as a business to ensure that the staff is aware of this. There's clear guidelines, internal training has been completed, and we are essentially responsible. And think that's at this stage, that's how they can best approach it. When things start to get a little bit more, there's more legislations in place and there's more, certification that you might need around it for businesses. I think that might be a different matter. You know how you have training for there might be certain training that they might need to do when you have those compliance trainings.
Yeah, like
yes.
The PCI DCSS training
exactly.
for the card readers.
That's exactly it. And I think this should already be happening right now, actually. I think we're a little bit late, but in my opinion, that's how I would tackle that as a business.
Chantal, any thoughts on this?
I agree, and funnily enough, with ChatGPT, we asked it the question and said, when we put data in here, or we ask you a question, do you learn from this? It came off the back of something else, kind of thing, and we said, do you remember this information? Do you put it as part of your learning? Will you now change your answer? Basically, giving us the wrong answer about something, we challenged it, etc. Anyway, its response to that particular question was, oh no, all of this stuff is kind of almost within a firewall, if you want to call it that, and we don't learn anything, we don't take anything from it. That's what it told me. I don't believe it for 1 nanosecond. Right, and that's not because I don't believe AI necessarily, because that's just it's a piece of technology, but it's because I do not necessarily trust the people behind it, and therefore. And it seems to me, it's like, why wouldn't it want to take that information? Why wouldn't it want to learn from that? So the answer is, I don't know how safe, I genuinely don't know how safe it is or it isn't. However, I'm always err on the side of caution. So I would go with Fazana completely and say, be really careful about what you put in there. Think carefully about what it is you're sharing. And I would work on the basis of, yes, it's going elsewhere.
Yeah.
And if it isn't, well, lucky you.
And it's funny, I can't think what level of the paid ChatGPT that we're using at CH4B, but in the bottom of our chat, it says that basically the ChatGPT doesn't train its models by the data we put in. So there's something that you can pay for where it says it, so you have to take that on face value, but again, still be super careful. My view on it is, obviously, when were employee handbooks looked at? Because if you've not got your AI policy written into it, like you said, Fazana, there needs to be a document. There needs to be not in a statement of main terms or an employee contract, doesn't need to go in there, but AI policies need to be in employee handbooks. If employee handbooks don't exist in these businesses, if anyone's watching it, they should. So, there's an opportunity to get in touch with somebody that can help you, preferably CH4B, because we can help with that. But AI policy is as important as any other policy that you're going to put into an employee handbook now, because it's there and it's not going anywhere, and we don't have the compliance checks like we've said just yet, but it can't be too long before real levels of certification come in that businesses have got to jump through to be AI compliant legally. So bringing it in now to the last question that I've got for you, or the last scenario, should I say. The true return on investment of time saved. I've got some thoughts on this, but I'm going to say to you this. If AI typically saves 10 hours a week, but the owner of the company has not assigned that employee some higher value work yet, did they just build a very expensive system to let their staff finish at 2 o'clock on a Friday? I'm going to say yes, they probably have, because they can still take long. But I don't think the time saving's a problem, personally. It's where the capacity is put to. And is the founder very much aware that they have just saved 10 hours? Because we have to assume that not everyone's always honest, you know? So how do we police that? How do we look at that? I don't know. I'm open to interpretation on it. Ladies, over to you.
Chantal, do you want to go first?
Okay, I was going to let the AI expert go first, but okay. So I think yes is the answer. Of course you have. If you've saved all that time and not reallocated it elsewhere, then yes, you're letting someone spend much longer in their tea breaks or whatever it is they're doing. But I also think you're also in danger of that person becoming more and more disengaged, less and less interested in their job, and probably actually you're going to lose them ultimately anyway. So I think it's a bad thing all round. As a good manager, whether you've got a management structure or whether you're the CEO and you're managing them, if you're implementing AI, then you need to have, I think Fazana said right at the very start, you need to know why you're implementing it. What is it going to do for you? What's the point, basically? Having worked out the point, then of course the implementation you want to be able to measure in some way. And I'm not a big fan of massive graphs and filling in this and KPIs, because you can spend more time doing all of that stuff than you can actually doing the job. But you know, an intelligent person can kind of go, well, that's interesting, that job used to take me this long and now it takes me a bit less, kind of thing. So you should be talking to your employee once they've got kind of the hang of it, because in the beginning it might well take them longer to do the work while they get used to the technology. And then kind of get a rough idea of whether it is saving them time, and then talk to them about the things you would like them to do instead. So it all comes back to knowing what you're doing it for in the first place, and then constant communication. I mean, I know I said you can ask me any question and I'll go, it's an opportunity. I think probably the other thing would be give me any challenge and I'll say it's communication is the solution. So there you go. My expertise for the day is opportunity and communication.
Thank you, Chantal. Fazana, I'm interested in your take on this one.
So if it's just from a staff perspective and the staff save time, it's not really added any value, has it? If it's not increased your revenue or grown and you're not growing as a business, then what has it actually done? Yes, it's keeping your staff happy, which is also very important, by the way, because if the team's happy, the business is going to grow. So it's finding that balance, really. Are we growing as a business? Have we increased our revenue? Is our staff happy? And it's like, it's going to take a lot to get to that balance, essentially. But equally, if we go back to, if there's so many elements in somebody's day, in their job, they might have taken a chunk out of that through AI and made it faster and saved them loads of time. And essentially that person can obviously focus on something completely different, which means that actually they're not overwhelmed. They're not kind of, coming in the next day and saying, I'm 2 hours behind. So if you look at it from that perspective, that's something to think about as well. So it's not necessarily, it's probably a good thing, I think, if they are saving that time. But then it's like, well, where's the value here? How are you measuring the value, essentially? So that's my take on it. You can look at it in different ways, I think.
Yeah. You definitely can. And I just think, though, if people are saving that amount of time in a week, like 2 hours a day across a working week, 10 hours a week, have they had the opportunity to look at their staff? Where are they improving customer service? Where are they improving their staff? Can they coach them? Or looking at things like, okay, do I need to redesign your role now because we've got 10 hours extra capacity? We have to use that time somewhere else. Unless, of course, a business has a vision to go down to a 4-day working week, which I know a lot of companies are embracing now, that if they can use AI correctly, the staff financially don't lose out. But if the business can go down to a 4-day working week with a day off to improve people's mental well-being, quality of life, work-life balance, a lot of companies are wanting to embrace that. I know that's a vision in our company to get towards that at some point, but that's really down to the founder to look at whatever opportunity there might be to improve either workload across the company. Because again, as well, I think that if one staff saves 2 hours a day, how do you then duplicate that across the business? Where do you look at other departments? So I suppose for me, it is a lot about just looking at the structure of the business and working out why you want to go so gung-ho on AI. What is the actual purpose, And without that, it's just a bit of a pointless exercise, because you're paying out for stuff and not really getting the benefit the other end. I think that the technology is changing very quickly, and we are creatures of habit. I don't think we change as quickly. So I think that overall is going to be the biggest challenge that people are going to face, definitely. Any final points you want to put in on this conversation? I've not got anything else I want to ask you in my Ask the Expert series. Any final points?
I liked what you said, Claire, about this whole 4-day week thing. I think if you look at it, you know, then they've won, haven't they? It's a success if somebody's taken out that kind of last day to and you know, we've used AI to save that sort of time. I think that's a huge win for the staff, because if your staff is happy, you are going to thrive. Your business is going to thrive, right? And they're going to be in a better mood. They're going to be happier. They're going to have more time off. So ultimately, they are going to come in a little bit more productive on a Monday, if you think about it.
Yeah. And I would say at the moment within our company, I would say that every person within our business is fully bought into the vision of delivering the most outstanding service to our members, bringing on as many members as we can, you know, supporting their business goals. We're very, very, very motivated by doing that. But we're also extremely bought into the AI and how it can improve our business, because the idea of our business moving from a 5-day operation to a 4-day operation is fantastic. And actually, internally, it's the H4B. On Fridays, we don't do any real client-facing work. Everything is built on actually developing our AI skills and learning a lot more about AI and how it can improve our business, for all of us together to move towards that collective goal of actually working 4 days a week and improving our work-life balance as a result. And then everyone wins. So I just want to thank you both for joining me today on one of the hottest days of the year. Appreciate your time very much. I'm now going to just hit stop recording.